Welcome to Dear Asian Americans. I am your host, Jerry Wan. Hope you're staying safe. Hope you are staying healthy and hope you're staying indoors wherever you are. This episode is being recorded and uploaded in the earlier part of April in 2020. If you're listening to this well beyond the challenging times that we are going through during COVID 19, I hope that you have gained some perspective and clarity and have learned as much as we all are learning to lead better, healthier, and more mindful lives. And during these challenging times, I am so lucky to have so many conversations with amazing Asian Americans in our community who are doing what they can in however way, shape, or form to make sure that we get through these challenging times together, also taking the time to celebrate and support all the things that we have accomplished and we continue to do. Today, my guest is Kevin Nguyen, who is a higher education professional, also in pursuit of his PhD. Um, and I thought it would be so amazing to get his perspective on what he has studied from an academic to help us get a better understanding of the social things that we're going through, but also, he has a very special insight into how students are feeling these days and some of the ways that we can help some of our friends, our cousins, our nephews, our nieces, our friends really get through this. So, hey, Kevin, thank you so much for making time and joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to share my experiences, my personal experience, professional, and just academically, and what we're doing to combat the current xenophobia and racism within COVID-19, and then also supporting students in this tough situation right now.
Thank you. I'm really excited to learn. Let's start. Let's go back, a few years and start with the early years of Kevin's upbringing. How did the
Sure,
Nguyen family come to America? Where did you guys land initially? And tell us a little
sure.
bit about those earlier years.
Sure, yeah. It's my mom's family immigrated to first initially Minnesota in 1975, right a few days before the fall of Saigon. So it's really interesting of hearing their perspective of how my mom and her family immigrated to Minnesota, and they were sponsored by a church, and they had got a good amount of support throughout those times, and they had worked in Minnesota and was raising pretty much. My mom had like eight siblings, so a lot of siblings. And my grandfather and my grandmother raised, and just really seeing from my mom's perspective, she had finished high school in Vietnam, so she had to work and support the family, while also my grandparents working too, because that's kind of like the requirement when you're immigrating, and that process of within that house is either if you have finished like high school, either you're working, or some way to support the family and such. So my mom was working at the same time while some of her siblings was still going to school and such. And then also from my mom and my dad had met here in California. So my father's side, my father had came over roughly in the second wave in 1980s. So really both two different stories. My mom had came over here more in kind of the airplane, and was going through a smooth process with that process. But my dad had came over by boat. So really first going to boat to the Philippines, then once get to the Philippines, had gone to California. And my dad was fortunate that his oldest sister, my aunt, had gone here first, and then was able to sponsor my father. And once a few years after my mom and her family got used to, like was in Minnesota, they really wanted to be in a place that's warmer. So when in doubt, California. So my mom and her family had came to California and really started living in California and such. And my dad was at the same time just kind of trying to go to school. So my dad had landed in California in Los Angeles, in Glendale area. And then and then he was working and just grinding it out, and at the same time trying to learn English, try to go to community college, and trying to learn and working and such. And then once kind of more in the late 1980s, my mom and my dad had met. And they had first met in the mid 1980s, but then didn't work out. But later on, they had met each other again in the late 80s, and was kind of, in their early 30s, and they felt was ready to settle down. So that's how they got married and started a family. So my family is my parents, and then me and my sister. And then my parents, they both did not finish college. So they just finished high school in Vietnam, but my parents had started college. But then there was so much obstacles, as I've learned, is the English barrier. So my parents, they're able to speak a little bit of English, but as I can see it, there's a lot of barriers within trying to learn a new language. And they had really tried their best to help support me and my sister. And so my dad was more working in technician jobs, kind of supporting engineers. And my mom had worked in various different jobs. My mom had first worked in the restaurant business, and then also helped with sewing business. And then also my mom got a nail, so she's able to do nails too. So she did that for a little bit, and then after had work in more of medical devices, in assembling medical devices. And then so kind of really seeing for my parents of working different jobs and really trying to help support the family and such. So once my parents have started having me and my sister, so my sister is 2 years older than me, and I'm the youngest within the family. And then we've kind of bounced a little bit different areas within California. So after my parents had kind of started their life in LA, they had moved a little bit to San Diego, and then I was in NorCal for a little bit in San Jose. And then a few years after, right before I started first grade, my parents felt that it was time to go back to Orange County, because a lot of my family's in Orange County, and then a lot of my father's family was in San Gabriel Valley. So really, getting is interesting, getting perspective of understanding different communities of Little Saigon, but also the community in San Gabriel Valley. So really learning both communities of it. And then that was a little bit of my background within it. So ever since first grade, I've always been in Orange County for most of my life. And I went to a high school that's predominantly Vietnamese. So I went to La Quinta High School, which is roughly about, I would say, 60 to 65%
Wow.
Vietnamese. And if I open up the yearbook, I was looking at the yearbook, it's roughly been 10 years since I graduated high school. So our 10-year reunion was planned, but with COVID
Mm,
19, like really seeing how I was opening my yearbook and how the last name's Nguyen's, like it runs over like 2 or 3 pages, is how many Nguyen's that we have, and trans and such. So really being in a high school, a lot of Vietnamese American, we can see is a lot of competitiveness within academia, but also and also being so used to community, because it just kind of felt like a bubble to me when I was starting to go more schooling and such. So for most of my life, I've been so used to being around my community, my enclave and such. And it's been really great, and it's really great community within it. But I felt later on, once I moved on to different positions, really seeing there's importance of diversity, of really getting to know other people and such. And then once after with my high school career and such, I've learned that there's certain point of competitiveness can really lead to not really beneficial to your growth. So for myself, I've learned a lot of for sure experienced bullying when I was younger, for sure. I've experienced peer pressure when I was a little bit younger too. And for sure, my peer pressure had led me, for example, in my last year of senior year, I was suspended from the high school I was at, and I was asked to go to different high school due to made some different wrong choices, being peer pressure, trying to be part of the group, and it led me to be asked to go to another high school and graduate. So I was not able to graduate with the people I've been with majority of my K-12 career, and I've learned that it was more of it was a cheating scandal, and for myself that I should not cheat anymore because it's not going to lead my development in college and such. So it led me to learn my lesson in high school rather than now, and that's why I really try to aim to be ethical in my choices and whatever I'm doing. I've learned a lot of the stuff for sure I'll be talking about is like learning lessons, teachable moments. Anything I've made mistakes on, I'm going to make it teachable moments. So that's kind of led to me. And then for me, I didn't do so well in high school. I only got roughly like a 2.5 GPA. I didn't get into a lot of Cal States, UCs, any of that. So I went to community college for roughly about 2.5 years. I was led to from my parents to do the majors that everyone wants to be, which is nursing, engineering, bio. I started doing that for my first semester. I did well, but I was not interested in those type of fields, and it led me to do communication studies.
Mm,
And I was really fascinated with the way of communicating and such. Because for myself, when I was younger, I was very meek. I was very introverted, and also kind of like get me out of my shell. And also, what I was doing was I was competing in speech and debate and such, has really led me to who I am today. And also, when I was in community college, it kind of started my higher education professional career. I started my career working as a work study student and then in admissions and records. And then I started really liking helping students and providing that path. And I learned a lot of stuff on my way because my parents didn't, they went a little bit of college, but not as much in depth. So I had to learn a lot on my own, me and my sister. And then from just learning myself, that I was able to gain those skills to help future students. And I didn't realize that it was like a career. So I just
mhm,
kept doing what I was doing. And then once I transferred to Cal State Long Beach, I continued my studies while working. So really been just balancing working, schooling. I just think it's just a very normal process for me. And then once I finished my bachelor's degree, I just didn't know if I wanted to continue. Do I want to teach in communication studies or pursue a more in a career in higher education? But I wanted to continue a career in higher education. So I did my master's in counseling with a higher ed emphasis because for myself, I wanted to get attain more skills, which is in counseling, because I think is very important within our within our community. I feel like mental health is kind of a taboo topic, or something that my parents said, "Why do you need to talk to a counselor about it or any trained professional because you don't have an issue?" But like it sounds like it's very like you want to be very reactive in a situation if you have like experienced some issues of maybe mental distress and such. But I'm all about being proactive in anything I'm doing. Like if I'm it's important to before you hit that mental breakdown. And then I was able to so during my master's degree, you know, it was very important for us when we are studying for counseling is to go and try to do counseling and meet with a trained mental health professional. And that's what I did. So it really helped me really dig in and really explore what had happened from when I was younger. And really, was there any unresolved issues? Because I feel like a lot of us have unresolved issues that we have never ever talked about and talk about and really like resolve like was there any issues that we have now that we have experienced, like is there issues of abandonment, is there issues of self-esteem issues. I'm like, that's now, so it's important. I always usually always like to look at the past to really help resolve issues. And then that's something I've learned is important to be reflective of my past to really fix on whatever I need to work on. So it really opened my eyes to really look at that. And then for me, I always try to advocate for mental health when I try to help advise students when I was a counselor. And then once I was in my master's program, I also was offered a full time position at a community college, Cypress College. I was a coordinator to oversee a program that supports low income students and first generation. So within that program, I help support a lot of low income students, a lot of Asian American students who are low income, and also different students who are Hispanic, who are Middle East, just from different areas. But also, I was able to immerse in areas of foster youth. I was
Mm,
able to understand undocumented students more. So, really understanding different struggles because I feel like when I was younger, as being Asian American, Vietnamese American, I think a lot of our really seeing for myself, like a lot of our parents doesn't show the issues that they had, maybe financially, or any type of assistance that they got. Because I felt like everything was totally fine, but I've learned that it was a privilege that I didn't experience that. But it's important for me that I need to acknowledge my privilege, but also acknowledge that it's important to support others and try to be the best I can to support for it. And it really reflected for me how to be really open the best I can to support others. And it really opened my eyes to really show that there's a lot of support systems available for students to be helpful. A lot of public assistance, but also in the campus assistance too. And then once I slowly transitioned, I did some academic counseling. So I did some academic counseling at St. Anna College. So St. Anna College has a huge diverse community of Latino and also Asian American students, and it really was really great in advising students in the whole process of a lot of students were first generation college students. I was really helpful of that, and then it led me to a position at UC Irvine. I was a counselor for computer science students, so I had a really great time at UC Irvine. It really I was really crazy seeing the diversity within the campus, but also seeing computer science how it's such a rise within the career is such a rise, but then also seeing how students can be so stressful within the major. Students are coding night and day, a lot of hours, and I can see the mental toll within students. And then the one thing that I've learned from students is that sometimes they have not been really open about how they're feeling and they want to power through, but I can still see the stress in them. And the one thing I've learned is some students would take sometimes 20 units, 22 units. I'm like, that's crazy. And students sometimes want to be done due to financial reasons, but also I consider students would want the college experience, really being immersed in the college, but also trying to make connections with other students and such. Um, and at the same time, I really got to see students really help them support them in a lot of issues. So at UCI, when I was working there, there is 2 to 3 social workers that can help students throughout the process. When I was in my previous institutions I worked at, I didn't see social workers, and I see social workers are a very important process in helping students with maybe with different outside assistance, but also with the campus to help navigate some things and also can help case manage students. But also, that's not enough caseworkers, social workers. There's only 2 to 3 social workers for a campus that's roughly about maybe 20,000, 25,000, 30,000 students for graduate and undergrad students. So you can see there's not enough assistance, and also the overloaded amount of when they go to the counseling center too. There's not enough counselors available too for it too. So we try to usually refer to social workers, and then that's kind of really seeing some of the obstacles that we do see. And then while I was working at UC Irvine, I always had an inkling or a motivation to do my PhD. So I was really passionate throughout my whole career. My graduate program was to look at Asian American professionals or leaders because there's never enough. When I really reflected back in my master's program, I'm like thinking about all the places I worked at. I'm like, I don't see any managers, deans, vice presidents, or presidents who are Asian Americans. And I'm like, how come? How come? I don't really see that much. And then I learned more about different conceptual theories and myths. So I learned about the bamboo ceiling. I learned a lot of the model minority myth. So I can really see the huge impact how those two concepts really led to obstacles within professionals. And it really, when I learned about the model minority myth, I really reflected back in my K-12 experience. I'm like, I didn't get that much support from my teachers during my K-12 because they had this assumption that I didn't need any assistance and such. So I really saw the huge impact of those two, the myth and the bamboo ceiling and such. So I really, and then for me, really seeing that how like we're the model minority, which we aren't, and kind of led me to kind of continue doing my research interests in the field. So I'm doing a lot of studying right now, but also doing starting up a few research studies right now. So for myself, I'm taking an Asian American Studies class right now within my graduate program. So I'm doing my PhD at Claremont Graduate University in higher education. And right now, I'm learning a lot immensely about Asian American history and such. It's really great and interesting. It was my first time taking Asian American um, studies, history classes, and really seeing how our history was really um, a lot on agriculture. I didn't realize how a lot of different communities was doing agriculture, and also really learning how some Asian American communities have been here even around the same time in the colonial times too. Really seeing, understanding that it wasn't kind of more recent, but a lot of them has been earlier, and I didn't realize about that. And then, and also, what I've also learned doing my studies right now. So right now, I'm doing a study right now on looking at the psychosocial and environmental factors that can influence the success of Asian American leaders in higher education. So myself, I want to see what factors have made them successful, even though there is so many obstacles they have gone through. But what has worked? And for me, I've done so much literature reviews and in experience and studies from looking at previous studies. I've learned that mentorship is very important. Mentorship is very important in supporting other Asian Americans because I feel like the concept of mentorship was never huge when I was younger, and I learned that mentorship was very huge when I was in graduate school. And I always try to find different mentors, even if it's not Asian American mentors. I try to find different mentors that can be helping to give a different perspective. And then I'm very and that's how some things I've learned about that, and also trying to do different ways of learning how to just be part of different communities is very important to establishing the community and really helping supporting each other. I've learned of that, and there's still some more things I need to study on, but those are some initial things I found was very important. So I'm doing my study. I was hoping to do it this summer, but I might have to change it maybe more in the end of this year to get enough participants for my study. And then let me think. But that's kind of my stuff about my studies. And then for me currently right now, I my position right now is I'm a student data specialist at Whittier College. So I just started the position 3 4 weeks. So right before COVID-19, so I had done a lot of experience in student interaction, and I wanted to transition more in the back end within higher education. So looking for data analysis work, how to support students and really help with the reporting process within our data, because I feel like our data is not the most accurate data within the importance of this aggregated data. So that's kind of the way of doing things. And right now, I'm trying to help support students in the registration process or different ways to help support students at Whittier College in helping throughout this current situation with COVID-19. But yep,
Talk to me more about what you're hearing from students. You have
sure,
a front row seat to what
sure,
students are thinking, what they're talking
yeah,
about. You also have classmates in the graduate program, and I'm sure you have friends and colleagues from
sure,
various campuses that you've had the pleasure of working at. In speaking specifically to and about Asian American students,
yeah,
um, give us some thoughts on how we can positively deal and make sense of all this hate and
sure.
xenophobia, racism towards
Sure.
us.
Sure. I think right now, for us, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the amount of stress within our students. So they a lot of institutions are trying to do is offer students pass no pass as a grade option versus doing a letter grade option, because I think it helps kind of reduce the amount of student stress right now, because a lot of classes are adjusting to online, and plus also faculty don't have enough time to really set up a proper way of teaching the class. So that's why I felt like implementing a pass no pass for right now can be really help anxiety for the student, but also can help with the instructor too, that even though students are doing pass no pass and on their end teaching, like they'll try their best to adjust with the current situation. And then that's one thing that they're doing. Another thing that a lot of institutions are doing, so I work on the more the registrar side, is that we're planning or considering doing on the transcript is adding COVID-19 on the transcript. So for future
Mm.
reference is this semester was due to the COVID-19 situation. So other institutions, like when they apply for graduate school or med school, oh, understanding like this situation is due to this, and that's why maybe they did a pass no pass. So maybe that can give a little bit wiggle room and leeway for students. So that's another thing that the institution's doing. The hard thing that is hard to see right now is a lot of commencement is canceling or postponing. So really seeing a lot of students is hard thing is this might be the only opportunity for some students to graduate and their parents to see their child graduate, and the commencement is canceling. So some schools are trying to do a virtual commencement, different ways to still do it. Another thing that I've talked in my classes about racism and xenophobia. What we've been doing as for myself as a professional, I'm part of different associations. So for myself, I'm part of NASPA, which is like more of a National Student Affairs Association. So we do a little bit of community space. So so they try to lead different Zoom meetings to really vent what we're going through, like how are we combating with this current situation with COVID-19, but also sharing like have you have any experiences of xenophobia or racism currently right now. So I have like gotten few stories, some students and some professionals from the East Coast, for sure a lot of more experiences, maybe a little bit compared to California for it, and just trying to be supporting of it. And then we're doing a lot more, trying to do more Zoom interaction the best as we can to try to community, because I know right now it's a lot of isolation.
Right.
So I really try to do we try to do a lot of different things. And then I think I do see some places are offering online counseling a little bit, teleconference, telehealth as another way of to approaching it. But the hard thing I would say is that to really combat it, it's very hard because the rhetoric is going all the way from the top, from the president
Hmm.
of the United States all the way down. And I think for us, for me personally, I think it's just having a community support each other, but also a way to um, a way to report these issues. Like if
Right.
it's going on campus, I'm like, you got to go through proper channels to report it, and that's something that we shouldn't condone this type of behavior.
Right.
And the hard thing, I think they're trying to do different ways to supporting students. Is technology, because I we've learned that technology, it really creates a class divide with this setup with online classes. For sure,
Right.
students maybe in the middle to higher class, it's more they'll be more able successful. So a lot of colleges are offering Chromebooks. They're offering hotspots for students for the time being. So it does help a little bit, but it's just hard that it's not just technology, but also space. So sometimes school offers a sanctuary for students um, for that space to learn, but also maybe a lot of noise that is at
Right.
home. So that's the hard thing with this current everything, because I'm like,
Sure.
everything is going in and is in the house. Like sometimes I've had some of my classmates like, oh, I'm like, some of them are K-12 teachers. They're trying to teach
Right.
and
It's
they're
hard.
trying to take care of their children and also taking their classes. I'm like, it's everything at once. So I think it's a huge balancing act. Um, and it's right now, like, I think for myself, I haven't experienced that much. I haven't experienced like racism right now, currently, in this situation. But I always try to do things I can to help support the community best as I can. So one thing I try to do is I try to help support local businesses. I try to order if I can the local businesses, Asian American businesses, because I know I've been reading a lot on how some of the businesses are going down right now due to the current, COVID-19
Hmm.
situation, but also everything's locked down. So I try my best to help support the business as best as I can, and also help support different fundraisers, different nonprofits in this situation. Because really seeing the huge increase in unemployment is gigantic, and then I got to do my part to help
Right.
assist as much businesses to kind of reduce the amount of unemployment as best I can, and then try to help kind of hang in there. But yeah,
Sure. So you mentioned a little bit earlier and um, about the lack of diversity that you see within your industry, within definitely the higher levels of higher education.
yeah,
It's certainly something we see also in the private sector, where
yeah,
the to use a higher academic analogy, the administration, especially at the higher levels,
yeah,
it's a fundamental question of, do you believe that that diversity should be reflected in the student population, or I guess the reverse, should the student population be reflected in the decision making bodies of schools? Right now, the answer is unfortunately not, and it
yeah,
is at the community school level, it is at the K through 12 level, it is also at the 4 year plus graduate school level. It just seems to be, in academia overall, a big disparity between who's paying the tuition and then who
yeah,
is dictating not only the academic curriculum but some of the policies. And as we talk about, let's say a racism incident gets reported to the administration, how do they handle it? Who's taking it? What kind of
yeah.
experiences and empathy are they responding with? Um, Share with us one thing that you'd like to share with the listeners on why it is more, why you believe it is so important for somebody listening who might be interested in a career in student affairs or in higher education that they choose to do so?
S- So, if they're interested, even versus of like the current struggles with like lack of diversity and such, is that the question?
Yeah, I think, inspire somebody listening to
Oh,
choose
sure,
you follow
sure,
in your path to choose a
yeah,
career in higher
yeah.
education.
Yeah, I think for myself, the reason why I think is really interesting and great to be part of this field is even though for me is really create a great example. I don't really for myself. I don't see that much. When I was younger, I didn't really see much professionals like myself in the shoes, and I think important to continue to pave the road for myself. I really want to really continue on. So my goal is to really move forward to director, dean, and such because I feel like the importance is we might need to continue in moving up to really create an example and a pathway for future professionals who are interested in it. Because I feel like if if we see others kind of at a stopping point, then it means that that's the ceiling, but we need to show and create future examples. And then I'm lucky and fortunate I've met others who I view as mentors, see them get to that point, and I really do want to continue that. And I think we're slowly getting there, but it still takes a time and a process within it. So for myself, it's kind of um, I want to kind of help students kind of within the student population that I do represent, but also really help creating a path for others in the future to continue of it. And then for me, I'm someone that's very huge on mentorship. So I really try to help mentor future professionals. So in my previous master program, I do see a few professionals who represent Asian Americans. So I really do my best to help support future ones to help pave the road because we never get that much support. And
Right.
I really do my best to help kind of along the way of it. So for me, the main reason just kind of paving the road for future others. And then once others are doing the same thing, then it kind of continues this path and you're creating a road for others. But yeah.
Yeah, I think hearing your story is so inspiring. Obviously, with the context of your parents' journey to America, two separate paths, and you know, uh, your painful high school memory of having to pivot, and now obviously going from that
Yeah.
to being a first generation student, and also in a few years being Dr. Kevin, which I think is
Yeah.
something to be immensely proud of, and I'm sure your family and your friends. Um, and I think that is inspiration to many other people, maybe in your shoes, maybe growing up in Orange County or have similar life stories of how we ended
Yeah.
up here. To know that it's possible, and to know that it can be in a field where you study us, and you do it for a lot of people that look like us. Um, I do we end the show in the same way that we end all of our shows. I guess we end the show in one
Yeah.
way, which is to go back to the title of this show, and it's the Asian Americans. The impetus or the inspiration for the show really is to create a conversation for us, by us, and so I want to start the letter. And if
Sure.
you would help us finish out the show by
Sure.
finishing the letter, dear Asian Americans.
Dear Asian Americans, I would want more others to continue the path of leadership representation for Asian Americans. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Is that the usually how it ends, or
No,
sorry?
it's purely up to
Yeah.
you. There are no rules. There's no time. There's
Yeah.
however you whatever speaks to your heart.
So within representation, within Asian Americans and within leadership, and continually support within our community as best as we can, and continue sharing our stories and mentoring as much as we can from there.
Thanks, Kevin. I think if we learn anything from your story, oftentimes we limit our belief of where we can go based on where we come from.
Yeah.
And you have proven to us and shown us and then led by example that your background does not dictate your future. Where you
Yeah.
come from does not dictate where you can go. So, thank you for doing all that you're doing. I think you lead by example. I think you lead through living it on a day to day basis. And I cannot wait to hear more from you
Yep.
about all the work you're doing. And I do think that students, whether they're in high school or in college, very very vulnerable years, and aside from um, you know just in general, aside from race based or identity duality of being an Asian American, it's just a tough time to figure out what the heck you want to be and how you're supposed to
Yeah.
feel, and dealing with parents and all these emotions. So, uh, really glad that we have people like you to help guide some of our students and to also help fellow peers along. So, Kevin, thank you for your time. Continue to do what you do. I'm very grateful that you made time for us today and being a beacon of light and an inspiration point for many, many in the higher education space.
Thank you very much, and hope our viewers stay healthy, stay safe, and we're all of us are gonna get through this.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.